Mary and Joseph didn't leave Jerusalem for Bethlehem specifically to give birth. They traveled because of a government order, and the birth happened while they were there. Let's be real and clear about this, because people twist simple facts into something else when the truth is already powerful on its own. The deeper explanation starts with a Roman census that required movement, not comfort, not convenience, and definitely not timing that made sense for a pregnant woman. According to the Gospel of Luke, the Roman Emperor Caesar Augustus ordered a census, which was basically a population count, and everyone had to return to their ancestral hometown to be registered. This wasn't optional, this was law, and when law speaks under an empire like Rome, people move whether they like it or not. Joseph was from the line of King David, and Bethlehem was David's hometown, which made Bethlehem Joseph's legal and ancestral city. So even though they were living in Nazareth, Joseph had no choice but to travel there to comply. This wasn't about preference, it was about obedience to authority under pressure. Bethlehem wasn't random, it wasn't chosen for comfort or convenience, it was tied directly to Joseph's lineage, rooted in history and connected to identity. King David was born there, and Joseph carried that bloodline, which made the journey necessary even when it was difficult. And let's not overlook the reality here. Mary was pregnant, close to giving birth, and still had to make that trip. That alone tells you the level of pressure they were under. Mary went with Joseph because staying together was the safest and most logical decision, especially in a time where stability mattered. When they arrived in Bethlehem, there was no room available for them, no comfort waiting, no special treatment, just reality hitting hard. And right there, in the middle of that situation, Mary went into labor and gave birth to Jesus. Not planned like people imagine, not staged, not set up in advance. It happened in real time, under real pressure, in a place they were required to be, not a place they chose for the birth. Now here's where it goes deeper, because this wasn't just a random chain of events. It aligned with prophecy in a way that shows purpose beyond circumstance. The prophet Micah had already spoken centuries earlier that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem, long before Mary and Joseph ever made that journey. So even though they lived in Nazareth, and the trip was triggered by a Roman order, everything still lined up exactly the way it was meant to. That's the part people miss when they oversimplify the story. It wasn't about planning a birth location, it was about fulfilling something bigger, something already spoken into existence long before it happened. In simple terms, they didn't go to Bethlehem because of the birth, they went because of a census. And the birth happened there at exactly the right time, not by accident, not by chance, but in alignment with a purpose that was already set in motion. Jesus, truth over politics. What the story actually shows, was he a refugee? This part is much closer, and it deserves to be explained clearly without people twisting it into something it's not. In the Gospel of Matthew, King Herod the Great ordered the killing of young boys in Bethlehem, a violent act driven by fear and power, not justice. That moment forced a decision that no parent ever wants to face. To protect him, Mary and Joseph fled to Egypt, and that detail matters more than people realize. They didn't leave for opportunity, they didn't leave to build a better life, they left because staying meant danger. That's the reality. When you break it down, it comes down to fleeing violence and crossing into another land for safety. That's not political, that's survival. By modern terms, that does resemble a refugee situation, even if it wasn't labeled that way at the time. Now let's talk about something else people either ignore or soften too much. Was Jesus poor? Most evidence points to yes, and not in a romanticized way, but in a real, everyday struggle kind of way. Joseph was a carpenter, which was a working-class trade, not a position of wealth or status. This was a family that lived by their hands, not by influence or power. When Jesus was presented at the temple, the offering given was the one allowed for those who couldn't afford more expensive sacrifices, and that detail speaks volumes if you actually pay attention. It shows limitation, it shows humility, it shows a life that wasn't surrounded by comfort or excess. As Jesus grew and began his ministry, he continued to live simply, not chasing wealth, not building status, not surrounding himself with luxury. That wasn't part of his life, and it never became part of his message. So when you put it all together, it becomes clear without forcing it into something else. Immigrant in the modern legal sense, not quite, because that definition didn't exist the way it does today. Refugee, yes, briefly, because there was a real moment where fleeing danger into another land was necessary for survival. Poor or from a humble background, very likely, based on the evidence we actually have, not assumptions or modern interpretations. And here's where people need to be careful, because a lot of comparisons today are made with good intentions, trying to highlight compassion for the vulnerable or to show that Jesus identified with the marginalized, and there is truth in that idea. But it's important to keep the historical context accurate, not just symbolic, because truth doesn't need exaggeration to be powerful. The reality already speaks for itself if people are willing to look at it honestly. Jesus was not American. Let's tell the truth clearly, Jesus was not American, and he almost certainly did not have blonde hair and blue eyes. And that's not an opinion, that's just historical reality that people either ignore or never learned properly. When you actually look at nationality and identity, Jesus Christ was born in Bethlehem and raised in Nazareth. And that matters because location tells you culture, background, and identity. His parents, Mary and Joseph, were Jewish, not European, not Western, not anything close to what modern images try to suggest. They lived in the Middle East, in a region historically known as Judea, under Roman rule at the time, which already tells you we are talking about a completely different world than what people picture today. The idea of being American didn't even exist back then. The United States wouldn't be founded for another roughly 1,700 years. So calling Jesus American is not just inaccurate, it's completely disconnected from history. Now let's talk about what he likely looked like, because this is where a lot of people get uncomfortable, but truth is still truth. Based on historical and anthropological evidence of Jewish people in that region during that time, his skin tone would have been olive to brown, not pale European. His hair would have been dark, brown or black, likely coarse or wavy, not straight blonde. His eyes would have been brown, not blue, and his height was probably shorter than what people today consider average. In simple terms, he would have looked like a typical Middle Eastern Jewish man from the 1st century, not a Northern European figure that shows up in so many paintings. So why do people keep seeing a completely different image? That comes from centuries of Western art shaping perception, instead of reflecting reality. Many familiar images show Jesus with light skin, long light brown or even blonde hair and blue eyes, and that didn't come from eyewitness descriptions. It came from European artists painting him to resemble themselves and the people around them. During the Renaissance especially, artists in Europe created the image that many still recognize today, and over time that image became normalized even though it doesn't match the historical context. This isn't about attacking faith. It's about being honest with the facts instead of holding on to an image that was culturally created. The bottom line is simple and doesn't need to be softened or twisted. Jesus was not American. He was not blonde-haired or blue-eyed, and he was a Jewish man from the Middle East, and that truth stands on its own whether people feel comfortable with it or not. Hey, feel free to hit like so that I know that you are into this kind of content, and I can provide more for you if you stay till the end. Feel free to leave a comment. Please stay blessed. Thank you for your time. Love always, Maria DC Santiago. Hey, feel free to hit like so that I know that you are into this kind of content, and I can provide more for you if you stay till the end. Feel free to leave a comment. Please stay blessed. Thank you for your time. Love always, Maria DC Santiago.